Welcome to another installment in our series devoted to the mysteries of the human body. Last time, we touched on the topic of Satan, or the devil, but also Lucifer. Throughout the centuries, fear reigned among the people of this entity. Fear is often caused by ignorance or misunderstanding. And I must say that the Church has also made extensive use of similar symbols to intimidate people. Justifiably? Maybe. But this entity only performs its service in our world. And it is up to people whether they will follow this energy vampire in their actions and thoughts, or whether they will follow the inner voice of their heart and act accordingly in their lives. These two energy organs, the brain and the heart, complement each other in the best-case scenario. By the way, did you know that thoughts are material? Even though we cannot see it, our brain sends signals outside our body. It could be compared to thought speech bubbles in the game SimCity. Do you use cloud data storage? The principle is actually the same. Your thoughts do not disappear, but are stored as energy data streams in what is known as the cosmic Google. The cosmic Google, or Akasha, is a subtle ether and a universal library, recording all human thoughts and emotions, thus becoming the so-called Akashic records. Perhaps we are talking about the biblical book of life here. While the data files we create are stored on a cloud server, thoughts and emotions as data files are stored in the cosmic cloud. We are talking about the so-called fifth element, ether. The existence of ether as the gas of the gods has been mentioned by ancient scholars. It is supposed to function as a medium for the propagation of light and electromagnetic waves. Ether was also supposed to be part of Mendeleev's periodic table, initially as element X, with the proposed name newtonium. However, the name newtonium was ultimately used for another element, and ether as a gaseous element was removed from the table. Why? Perhaps because ether belongs to the group of elements in quantum chemistry, and here we begin to tread on thin ice. We must never forget that everything in the universe, living and non-living, is of energetic origin and leaves its mark, constantly changing its form. We live in a virtual world from which we escape into another virtual reality. and our bodies are not much different from artificial robotic bodies. with one difference. A robot's intelligence is programmed by humans, but humans can never give it emotions. That's what makes a person human. But humans were programmed by the supreme architect of the universe. The shape of the body and certain characteristics inherited from the father and mother are encoded in DNA. But the capacity for emotion and humanity comes from that indescribable divine particle in the form of this little magical light, which resembles a data disk. And now you are surely asking yourself, how does all this relate to the devil? This is relevant to virtually all aspects of our lives, as we will show. As for Lucifer, his name comes from Latin and means light bearer, that is, our sun. As you can see in this illustration, the snake connects the moon and the sun. However, the moon represents our earth, and the snake holds the sun in its mouth. This scene is actually related to the biblical expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise. The biblical paradise was not a territory in ancient Mesopotamia. Paradise was a different way of life for people on earth. The Vatican Observatory is also called Lucifer. This is not because the Church worships the devil, but because the Vatican is interested not only in the movement of the stars, but also in the sun. In many illustrations, we can see strange creatures eating human beings. This is not literally the case. They are shadow energy entities that we cannot see. Their insidiousness lies in the fact that, thanks to their energetic form, they can control our bodies and minds. But the devil, who is actually the biblical serpent, the dragon, is a chapter unto himself. The biblical serpent connects the sun with the earth, and its energy influences human behavior and, in particular, thoughts. Perhaps it is the cause of our forgetfulness of our previous lives. This is beautifully depicted in this Egyptian fresco. A biblical woman sitting on a snake. The snake spits saliva on headless and bound bodies, which in reality are not bound and do have heads. How is that possible? The biblical woman represents the moon and the earth, which hides the moon. We call it the earth's core. Now I will ignore the so-called moon in the sky, which is nothing more than a luminous chimera. People who kneel before the serpent like slaves lack free will. The serpent is a whisperer and manipulates the human mind. They are bound, but in reality it is a symbol of human beings being bound to the earth. Yes, that's him, and you may be wondering how it is possible for two such different worlds to exist side by side. The material world we know and the energetic and spiritual world we cannot see. Well, we already have the means that allow us to glimpse the other world. But how is it possible that digital technology sees this other world? Is this further proof that we live in virtual reality? And it is very likely that these two worlds existed side by side in Atlantis, an advanced civilization and this literally fairy tale world. And everyone saw everyone else. Isn't it beautiful? They do not have solid bodies. Their bodies are light. Let's return to Satan for a moment. More precisely to Baphomet, who terrifies the whole world so much. In fact, it is a symbol of our journey into this world and also our departure from material life. Satanists who practice this cult, including occult rituals, often have no idea what it is all about. Do they want to scare those around them? Let's start from the top. The head is a combination of a bull's head, which are the lower horns. The upper horns belong to a goat. The bull is a sacred symbol and most likely represents life energy. Both animal symbols often appear in Egyptian frescoes. However, the goat is most likely a symbol of male fertility, as we will explain later in the video dedicated to Egyptian mysteries. This animal hybrid carries an eternal flame on its head. This is a symbol of eternal life. Its right hand points upward toward the sky. In the middle part of the body, we see two snakes emerging from an egg in the abdominal area. The entire figure is a combination of female and male bodies. The company of two snakes can often be seen in Egyptian culture. On Tutankhamun's mask, there is a sacred cobra on the right, which in Hinduism, for example, represents protection and connection with the highest deities. On the left, however, is a bird, and it is unusual. It clearly also has a snake's body. In many religions, the bird is a symbol of the soul incarnated in a material vessel, our body. We will return to this several times. On the right side of Baphomet, we see the inscription Salve, which translates to freedom. On the left hand, which is pointing downwards, is the inscription Coagula. Literally translated, it means glue. This is an expression of our attachment to the earth. The throne on which Baphomet sits may be frightening to some, but that is part of our life here on earth. We shed our physical bodies and move on to other incarnations, forgetting who we were before and what we learned. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. Let's look at a simplified and better-known illustration. Some details differ in this image. The head lacks bull horns and only has goat horns. It occurs to me that the symbol of the goat may have another meaning. As a symbol of something animalistic within us, fear, the instinct for self-preservation, and other low-frequency energies that draw us into the embrace of dark energy vampires. I hope that once you understand what I am talking about here and what I will continue to talk about, the fear of this world will completely disappear from your mind. Let's look at the goat's head and see the pentagram. What exactly is this symbol? The pentagram is a diagram of Venus's trajectory. Venus completes this pattern once every 8 years. And here we have the magic number 8 again. The pentagram of Venus is sometimes called the petals of Venus and is a symbol of femininity. In conjunction with the movement of the earth, it creates an incredibly beautiful pattern, resulting in a 5-petaled flower. The 5-petaled rose was often used in the church, heraldry, and other symbolism. How can the universe itself create something so beautiful and incredibly complex? Satanists invert this symbol so that it stands on its tip, but in this image it is correct. Inverting the symbol has no meaning. Its shape does not change. The circle in which the pentagram is often placed signifies protection. The middle part of Baphomet's body has pronounced female features. In the abdominal area, we again see 2 snakes striving for a human egg. Note that one of the snakes is white and one is dark. The dark serpent on the left casts human beings into matter and darkness, as shown by the left hand pointing downwards towards the symbol of the black moon, the earth. The white snake is a symbol of light and causes human souls and angelic souls to ascend toward the light. This symbol is used today in healthcare and pharmacology. Does he use it or abuse it? Now that we've gotten to the abuse of symbols, something is still bothering me. How can Baal and Moloch be justified? In the Bible, Moloch is an ancient deity of Ammonite or Canaanite origin, worshipped by sacrificing children by burning them in fire, which is strictly forbidden by the Bible. His name comes from a Semitic root meaning king. The Bible also mentions a divine figure that has 4 forms: a man, a lion, an eagle, and a bull. These 4 beings, often referred to as cherubim, represent God's glory and creation, and in Christian tradition are identified with the 4 evangelists. The Bible also states that after the Israelites crossed the sea on dry land, they began to worship a golden calf, that is, a bull. The bull is deified in Egyptian culture, and bulls had their own tombs here. In India and in Hinduism in general, the bull is still revered. The bull as a sacred animal can also be found in Greek and Mycenaean culture. It was a symbol of strength and fertility. In Greek mythology, he often represented wild, uncontrollable power, or the disguises of Zeus himself, a divine being as mentioned in the Bible. It also appears in the mythology of Europa, who was abducted by a bull. This is a drawing by Leonardo da Vinci. It depicts a scene after a biblical cataclysm. On the right, you can see the Earth after the biblical waters receded following the global flood. An eagle with a crown on its head sits on the earth as its symbol. This is the equivalent of the biblical dove. On the left side, a bull with the tree of life is sailing across the sea. The bull symbolizes life energy and fertility, while the tree represents the next human generation and human civilization. The bull here represents the biblical branch. Today's Western civilization considers Moloch Baal to be a demon, which I cannot agree with. Moloch, meaning king in Hebrew, is depicted as a demon who eats children. Firstly, in the language of the Bible, all people are children. Secondly, Moloch does not eat children, but passes on to them what is known as the star fire. This is the little energy light that each of you has and that no one can see. We pass this star fire on through the generations via our descendants. But how did Moloch become a demon? The answer is simple. Matthew writes that anyone who sacrifices to Moloch will be stoned to death. But we must take into account that the Bible forbids idolatry, and sacrifice is the cruelest form of idolatry. Today, we could consider prayers for our own benefit to be idolatry. The Israelites invented a way to make people dislike this sacred symbol and used it for torture, which they called sacrifice. Yes, there are still many inhumane beings in the world. For this purpose, they invented a bronze bull into which they put the poor, condemned man. They lit a fire under the bull, and I probably don't need to tell you the rest. The Romans also adopted this abomination, but no longer as a sacrifice to the gods, but as a form of execution and entertainment. You can imagine how much people must have hated this instrument. And the sacred bull suddenly became a demon. But it is interesting that no one purified this bull. The church remained silent. Only Eastern cultures continue to maintain this deified animal. It's the same as the Nazis' misuse of sacred symbols, and there were many such instances. By the way, do you know who this is? That's right, Michelangelo's Moses. But why does it have horns? Was it the devil? History can sometimes be amusing, and one bad translation can change everything. This is a mistranslation from the second book of Moses. The Hebrew original described Moses with the words kara or panav, which translates as his skin glowed with light. But when the Catholic Church produced the official Latin translation of the Bible, it came out as, and I quote, cornuta esset facies sua. Translated, this means, his face was horned. And since then, painters and sculptors, fearing punishment if they did not adhere strictly to the scriptures, began to depict Moses with horns. By the way, I found this out in Dan Brown's book called The Lost Symbol. I recommend reading anything by this author because he has good insights and goes into depth. As we can see, even a small mistake or intention can turn history and facts in a completely different direction. For now, I bid you farewell, and in the next episode, we will delve deeper into the subject.